Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. Let's go ahead and call to order the January 17th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting for the town of Truckee. Yeah, it's still the town of Truckee. Can we have a roll call, please, Kaylee?
Chair Gove.
Here. Vice Chair
Tarnay.
Here.
Commissioner Riley.
Here.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Claren.
Here.
All right, I'd like to invite all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, our first order of business tonight is the swearing in of new Commissioner Mitch Claren, and I will hand over this task to Town Clerk Judy Price, who is making her way up to the podium right now.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners, and thanks for the opportunity to come into your meeting tonight and swear in your newest Commissioner, Mitch Claren. I'm going to have him take the spot. Can you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Mitch Claren, do solemnly swear.
I, Mitch Claren, do solemnly swear
To support and defend.
to support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California
Against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic,
I bear true faith and allegiance.
and bear true faith and allegiance
To the Constitution of the United States.
to the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
I take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which
the duties upon which
I'm about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you.
She does that really well, doesn't she?
Okay, next item on the agenda is a public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make any public comment for which is not on tonight's agenda. If you do have a public comment you would like to make, please step up to the podium, state your name, and you have 3 minutes to prattle on about whatever you wish. Okay, seeing none, we will close. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no problem.
I thought I'd be like the last one, and here I am the only one.
No, it's the new agendas. Anything not on the agenda.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is public comment for that's not tonight's meeting. Just prattling, exactly. No, okay, all right. So seeing none, we'll close that and move into item number 6, which is the approval of minutes, which seems to happen every meeting on these these ones. Hopefully we can get through it tonight. Okay, number 6.1, September 2022 minutes, regular meeting. I was absent, so I will not be voting on this one. Does anybody have any comments or addendums they would like to make on the meeting minutes for the September 20th meeting? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 20th minutes.
A second.
Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Tarnay.
Yes.
Commissioner Riley.
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
And Chair Gove is noted as abstained.
Thank you. Okay, moving into October 18th, 2022 minutes, a regular meeting. Commissioner Freeman was not at that meeting. Does anybody have any comments or changes they would like to make to those meeting minutes? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I will move that we approve the minutes from October.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chair Gove.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tarnay.
Yes.
Commissioner Riley.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to November 15th, 2022, meeting minutes, regular meeting. Vice Chair Tarnay was absent from this one. Does anybody have any comments or changes they would like to make to these meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, I will vote to, make a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Gove.
Yes.
Commissioner Riley.
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Fabulous. We can finally cross those off the list. Okie dokes. Moving into agenda item 8, public hearings, major review. The first one on tonight is agenda item 8.1, application number 2014-008, the Martis Valley Quarry 2-year review project amendment. And Chantal will be giving a staff presentation. Take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight I'm here with the Martis Valley Quarry 2-year review. This is item 8.1, as Chair Gove just mentioned. So a little background on what the Martis Valley Quarry is. It's an open pit aggregate mine. Aggregate is small to medium coarse-sized particles like sand, gravel, or crushed rock. And that is mined and then processed, some of it at least, in their asphalt plant that is also on site. The aggregate is mixed with asphalt oil and heated and processed to make asphalt concrete, which is what we see on our roadways. The town of Truckee uses this concrete. Caltrans and private developments needing asphalt could also purchase from the plant. Here we have the project location. It's at the end of Jorger Ranch Road next to TTSA's wastewater treatment plant. While we have this map up, I will say when we're talking about some of the neighbor concerns, they are mainly coming from the neighbors in this area in like the Royal Way, kind of above the bluff of the plant. So when we get there, that's where most of our neighbors who have concerns are coming from. Here is a kind of closer up aerial view. You can see the asphalt plant, the rock plant. This area up here is reclaimed land that is no longer being mined. So the Nevada County Planning Commission in 1983 approved the mining operations in the asphalt plant and the reclamation plan. They also approved 4 amendments to the use permit. And once the town incorporated, that became our use permit. It's important to note that the Planning Commission really has limited authority this evening. The judicial decisions since 1983 show that the use permit can only be changed or have new or modified conditions if there's a substantial evidence of a detriment to public health, safety, or welfare. However, if the commission and the applicant, Tykert, would like to make changes that they both agree to, we do not need to have that substantial evidence clause. A little more history. The original use permit required that Nevada County and then the town review the mine every 5 years. I think there was a little bit of a lapse in that at the beginning of the 2000s, but they began 5-year reviews again in 2017. And during those reviews, the main concerns from surrounding residents that came up were about odor from the plant, noise from the crushing of the aggregate, and also dust. That fugitive dust that came from operation of the plant and the mine. In 2017, the commission adopted some additional new conditions of approvals and modified some in agreement with Tykert. And that began an annual review process, so 2018 and 2019. Then in 2019, everyone agreed to another 1-year review. There were some best management practices and solutions that were coming online, so everyone agreed to do some more review. 2020, the commission and Tykert agreed to a 2-year review, and that is where we are this evening. So tonight, the Planning Commission's role is to conduct the biennial review of the quarry, and we're really going to focus tonight on whether or not the use permit conditions are being complied with, and we'll talk a little bit more about the odor issues, and then there is a small recommended modification of condition of approval number 32. So in both the staff report and potentially in Tykert's presentation and possibly in mine, we'll see how it goes, we might use some of this mining lingo. We've got SMARA, that is the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act, that is administered by DMR, which is the Division of Mine and Reclamation. That is for the reclamation plan, basically an approved plan that shows that the mined lands will be returned to a usable condition. BMPs, a lot of times we talk about BMPs being for stormwater treatment or impervious surfaces. In this case, we're talking about best management practices due to handling some of the impacts, the dust suppression, noise, and odor. And we have some pictures. That's what the asphalt tank infiltration looks like. The batch plant acoustic curtains were added for some noise mitigation. You might hear EcoZorb. That is an odor additive that's added to the asphalt oil that comes into the asphalt plant to make the asphalt. The blue smoke system is one of the newer systems that traps oil droplets to help control odor. Squawkers, at one time there was noise issues due to trucks backing up, having those regular beepers. All the Tiker trucks have squawkers on them. Those aren't as loud. There are some other BMPs that were also instituted for noise that we'll discuss briefly. So here's a highlight of some of the 2017 conditions of approval. We started doing quarterly noise monitoring. They revised their dust suppression plan. There's a complaint log that's emailed to the town weekly. They added the EcoZorb. They did those asphalt tank infiltration system, water trucks. They revised the traffic flow so trucks didn't need to back in to get the asphalt batched into their truck, so there'd be a reduction of noise. And we'll quickly go through, this is kind of the list of conditions of approval and if they're still compliant in 2022, and they are. So they're submitting, we're receiving the Lahontan reports. The North Berm is on site. For nighttime noticing, they are sending notices out to residents and also town email for any planned nighttime activities. They're doing their dust suppression plan. As you see, there was one dust complaint, but overall, that's the only complaint we received for dust, so it seems that the dust suppression plan is working. As I mentioned, we get the complaint logs. EcoZorb is still in use. And then these other items from 2017 were completed back then, and they're still working. Let's see. Yep. So these are all 2017, 2018. So all these conditions of approvals are still being complied with. As I said, noise was one of the bigger issues. So condition of approval number 13, that was the quarterly noise monitoring. And actually, town staff works with the consultant to do the noise monitoring every quarter. There are actions if they're non-compliant, but they have been compliant every quarter with noise monitoring. And this is an example of where the noise is monitored. There's two, one on Royal Way and one over here on Foxborough. Now we've reached conditional approval 32. This is the condition of approval that we're requesting some minor changes to. So every 2 years following the 2022 two-year review, we'd like them to come back. And then we're changing the two-year review to be held on or before December 1st. And the reason staff is asking for that change is that staff works on an annual inspection for SMARA regulations, and staff doesn't usually have that inspection report before November. So if there were to be problems with the reclamation plan or anything, staff would prefer to have that and have that information for Planning Commission. And so just minor changes, and if the commission has any questions, obviously we can discuss that further. So condition of approval 40, this is the odor conditions. So Tiker came up with some best management practices to alleviate some of the odor impacts to residents. That's scheduling asphalt production to not occur during inversion or during evening, using storage tanks so they could pre-batch the asphalt and have the asphalt ready if there was a nighttime operation. They added that blue smoke control system and they relined their oil tanks. Some issues, staff is not able to verify compliance with all the odor BMPs, though, you know, we do trust that they are compliant, but it's not something that we can just check off a box. We had a meeting and Tiker did acknowledge that though they tried to schedule around those inversion times, however, sometimes they just need to produce the asphalt when a job comes up. So it's not a perfect science. So there is asphalt being produced during those early morning and nighttime hours. The odor complaints have remained steady and rising. A lot of our odor complaints this summer were for multiple days at a time or multiple hours. And it's true, the odor doesn't necessarily mean that there's a health risk. It may not be indicative. I don't think, we haven't sampled where they're having the odor complaints, so staff isn't comfortable saying that, but the Air Quality Management District is comfortable with their source testing and what they've tested. So they have passed all their air quality management district permits. So we did have a meeting, if you remember, we did continue our November Tykert review so that staff and Tykert could sit down and talk about what can be done about the remaining odor conditions. And I know that they feel that they've done, really everything that they can, adding the blue smoke system and, doing their other best management practices for odor. So knowing that there was nothing new that was going to happen, staff kind of looked and researched a little further about, odor nuisance complaints, what can we do, who's in charge, how do we need to research this or how to look. And so really it starts at the top. So the EPA has national emission standard, and odor is an air quality emissions issue. Then we have California Air Resources Board, they set California emission standards, and then there are local air districts that work at the local level that review businesses and stationary sources of emissions. There are 35 of those, and we are in the Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District. The odor issues fall under Rule 205 of the Air Quality Management District rules, and I won't read it, but you can. It only exempts odors from agricultural operations. And this rule mirrors the California Health and Safety Code Air Resources section. And so the Air Quality District, is the district that would investigate odor complaints. So in staff's research, we saw that local air districts all have this nuisance rule. They might have different rule numbers. It could be 2.5, it could be 8, but they all mirror the Air Resources Code. Also, staff found an EIR for a different mine, and in that EIR, they talk about that asphalt odors are not an issue because that local air quality management district would regulate the objectionable odors, and those are enforced on complaints. And there was another asphalt plant in Orange County where Air Quality Management District investigated odor. So, to staff, it looks like the next way to really get more information is to bring the Air Quality Management District in and see, it may be perfectly fine and they're all within their permits. So, but we believe that would be the right next step. So we are going to have any citizens that have complaints about odors reach out to either CARB or the Air Quality Management District. And we will work with them to see what's going on or what that looks like. Next, we'll move on to dust. As we mentioned, there was only one dust complaint in the last 2 seasons. And the Air Quality Management District has determined that the quarry is in compliance. Also, dust is an Air Quality Management District issue and part of their air quality permit, so they can also contact the Air Quality Management District if they see some dust issues. So for public comment, we've had, staff has been emailing over the summer for complaints with odors. These are, a lot of times the same complaints that that Tykert is receiving and bringing to us in the complaint logs. 2 residents, I believe, since I made this staff presentation, submitted public comments about odor. So in summary, staff believes that the quarry is in compliance with the resolution and is in compliance with their conditions of approvals. They have previously implemented several measures to reduce the impacts. Because the odor issues persist, we'd like to work with the Air Quality Management District. All their permits and approvals from other agencies are currently in compliance, and Tykert has agreed to an additional 2-year review cycle. So staff is recommending that that you adopt Resolution 2022-15, taking the following actions: approving the project amendment to change the review date to prior to December 1st and allowing the quarry to remain on a biennial timeframe, and determining that this project amendment is exempt from CEQA per 15061B3. Alternative actions that the commission can take is to continue the public hearing to date and time certain and request additional information either from staff or from the applicant. And the appeal period ends at 5 on the 27th.
Thanks, Chantal.
You're welcome.
All right, and now at this point, we'd like to give an opportunity for the applicant to present to the commission. The applicant is, all right, come on up to the podium and let's hear what you have to say.
Great. Michael Smith with Tykert, and why Chantel's bringing that up. Pleased to be here tonight. I know last time we were virtual in the era of COVID, so it's good to be back up and obviously and see the neighbors as well that we've been working with over the years. Before I get started on our presentation, which will be fairly quick, just introduce a couple folks that we have on our team to answer any questions that you folks or the neighbors may raise as well. We have Tom Hirschbach and Pete Sansbury who operate the plant and the asphalt plant. John Lane and Nick Armstrong from our environmental team at Tykert, and then John Taylor and Jesse Yang with our law firm of Taylor and Wiley that has worked with us through this process. So let's go ahead and go to the first slide here, Chantel. So basically, as Chantel talked about, there's a number of things that we've done over the years, and we just want to highlight those in particular because of the last bullet. And the Butler Justice System in particular is a very expensive item. It was one that Tykert agreed to do on our own. And certainly at the request of the neighbors for looking at additional technology. And that's the system you can see top left in particular, where trucks drive through that tunnel. There's garage doors on the side. That's where asphalt is loaded out. It captures any fumes that are coming out of there and then drives back out. You can see the picture on the right, which is the silo tanks. There's also a capture system there. And then at the very bottom, you've got the tanks themselves that have been relined recently with protective seal to further help any renegade emissions come from there. So all told, since we started this process in 2018, we've invested over $1 million in this system to capture any renegade emissions and also try and help the situation out. And we have a couple slides here later in here that Nick will go through that just talk about the differences that we've been able to quantify. So. And as Chantel also alluded to, there's a number, and I won't dwell on this one because she did a very good job, but a number of best practices that we've also agreed to do, once again, above and beyond, because we are in compliance with all of our conditions. These are things further that we have decided that we can work with and do to reduce odor, reduce noise, reduce dust. And I think in particular, the dust and the noise, as you saw, I believe there was a total of 3 complaints, 2 for noise and 1 for dust, that we've limited to this season, and we're continually working on those where we're making a difference. I believe the noise one, we had a brand new vehicle that just come in. We hadn't had a chance to swap it out with a squawker. That has now been changed. So we feel very strongly that on dust and noise, we are making a significant difference. On odor, we'll talk about that, but we've put into place our best management practices, such as limiting the oil temperatures, adding EcoZorb, scheduling when we can around certain events, nighttime or inversion layers. But one of the things that we do need to make clear is that a lot of the jobs that we do are not governed by what we can do as a plant, but rather by what the speculations are on those works. So for instance, if Caltrans is doing a job at night, we have to be able to provide them asphalt at night. So next one. And then certainly the air quality and hazardous air pollutants is one that we'll talk a little bit more about. And as Chantel alluded to, we're governed by CARB. We're also governed by the Northern Sierra Quality Management District. Both those entities are set up to protect the public. In our case, we have never been out of compliance with them. We continually do all our reports, submit them in a timely basis, do not have violations with regards to those. And then one of the things that Chantel also mentioned, and I think a point that we really want to make tonight, is that odor does not indicate a health risk, and we'll walk through a little bit as to why that may be the case. I think with that one, yep. So I'm going to ask Nick to come up. Nick is in our our environmental team and focuses on air quality, and I'll come back up and wrap this up in a little bit.
So, like you said, my name is Nick Armstrong. I work in the environmental group dealing with the air-related projects for Tykert, and we spent a lot of time evaluating the odors and the emissions. On the previous slide, one of the key points there to point out is that levels of odors do not necessarily indicate a toxic or a hazardous environment. Odor is often present at detectable limits that are significantly lower than what hazardous air pollutants would be at. And we're talking about parts per billion. Some odors are able to be identified by various individuals, whereas some of the hazards are significantly higher than parts per thousand for various compounds. And so you're talking on enormous scales of difference between when you can actually identify an odor versus when it becomes hazardous. So the health risk and health screening performed by the Air District indicates that we do not pose a significant hazard. And the Air District can speak more to the process that is complete here, but this does evaluate all of the emissions, including the hot plant at the facility, and just kind of for scale, where the risk threshold is at a scale of 1, and you can see we come in under 0.3 based on what their score for the prioritization would be. And these are approved methods that are identified and approved by OEHA, California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. And so they are the ones that really regulate toxic environments for communities and individuals in those communities. If you could go to the next slide, please. So we are required to do source tests every 3 years. And with those source tests, we are required to do organic gases. And you can see here from 2020 to 2022, we've had significant reductions. But from 2016 to 2022, there's an 86% reduction in organic gases that are being measured at the point of source from the hot plant. And this can be attributed to the blue smoke system that removes the particulate matter, the VOCs, and the other organic gases that are generated from the heating of the oil. And so this is a significant change, whereas it doesn't remove all the odor. It does improve upon the organic gases that are emitted. And so those are still going to be present in small quantities, so you still are going to be able to identify the odor. And just to note, in 2016 and previous, we still were well within our permit limits. We just have seen a huge reduction since the addition of that blue smoke system. Next slide, please. So addressing the odor, we've installed a number of available controls that were not required by our permit, but we did add those to the system, and they are maintained regularly and appropriately, and we perform regular maintenance to ensure that those are working as they are supposed to be. Additionally, there are things that are outside of our control, like Michael talked about, the time of day and when those aversion layers occur. We do try and mitigate that, but there are times we cannot based on Caltrans jobs. Additionally, the trucks that leave our facility are not covered. And once they leave that tunnel system, there is no control over the fugitive emissions. And once they're driving around the community, there's not a lot we can do to control those emissions. Additionally, oil composition changes for jobs, and that does have an impact on odor at times. There's, various compounds, including sulfur compounds, that can be significantly higher based on the spec of the oil that we have to use for that batch. And so that does make a difference. And the sulfur compounds are much more noticeable. They're not necessarily any more toxic, but they are much more easy to identify by individuals. At this time, we believe, based on all the technologies that are available and based on what we've installed, there are no other feasible practices that we can implement at this time that will improve upon the odor.
Thank you, Nick. And just before we go to that, I believe there is also a representation here tonight from their Quality Management District for their take on some of these issues. Next one then, please. So, and just lastly, one other thing that I just wanted to point out is that folks may see some changes. The asphalt plant has actually begun a process of going away and being replaced with a portable plant, because where the next form or phase of mining will be underneath the asphalt plant. So you can see there, we do have a change to this map that we've just kind of figured out internally, where we're not going to necessarily relocate it all the way to the south right away. The asphalt plant, or excuse me, the portable plant, and in the aggregate plant, not the asphalt. The portable plant to replace the aggregate plant will be located roughly where the same aggregate plant is, but off to the side. So, and we'll move it further south to the relocation area, but we're not able to do that for the next couple of years just due to the logistics of trying to get all the equipment in that area. So we did want to point that out just so folks are aware if they see activity and movement out there. Next slide. So with that, like I said, we we recognize that there are obviously a number of neighbors here and concerns here, but we still continue to operate within the confines of our permit and in compliance with all of our conditions and regulations. To date, we have implemented every best practice that we are aware of, that we have the ability to do. We will continually maintain those improvements. I know last year was a little bit of a trial and error year with the blue smoke system. It was fairly new, and I think we've got it more fine-tuned at this point where it can be more efficient. We will continue to do that throughout the year. As Nick mentioned, we're pretty comfortable understanding that our operations are not a health risk. The odors are not indicative of that health risk. But there aren't a whole lot more or anything that we're aware of that we can do to improve that. As Chantel said, we're also in agreement, even though we had requested a 5-year, we're comfortable going back to the 2-year. And maybe Chantel will do one more thing on here, and that is that in the staff report, in referring to that 2-year, it called out the year 2023, which I think technically should be 2024 if we're actually on a 2-year cycle. As we are in, this is the 2022 review right now. So with that, we are more than happy to answer questions, myself, Nick, or anybody else, and recognize that the neighbors would like to speak as well, and happy to answer their questions as well. And if anybody has anything before I depart, I'm glad to do that right now.
No, we will be moving into clarifying questions, but we're going to start with clarifying questions for staff. So if you and your colleague want to just remain up here next to the podium, we'll move into clarifying questions for the applicant after that. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's move into clarifying questions for staff, and I would like to start with Commissioner Freeman tonight. Commissioner Freeman, do you have clarifying questions for staff?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Tarnay, do you have clarifying questions for staff?
Yeah, is that on? Okay. So the regulation that you put up there and then didn't read, that's the big sticking point. So this regulation says that a person shall not discharge from any source whatsoever such quantities of air contaminants or other material which cause injury, detriment, nuisance, or annoyance. And so then is it supposed to be the Air Quality Management District that enforces that nuisance and annoyance as well?
I mean, that sounded like there was maybe a member of the Air Quality District here that could provide some more light, but this is the air quality, this is their rule from their rule book. So, I think that they probably investigate and determine whether or not it would fall under this rule.
Okay.
I think this was scheduled for last month, 2022, but there was not enough staff members that were healthy and well to attend the meeting, something like that.
And our inspector has been asked to always swing by Tykert. It's not that far. We have to come up here to service our equipment, swing by Tykert and see what you see, and just have a look. So when we talk about if somebody complained about